Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Good to be here.
Why is it that business owners very often retire broke, even after a big exit?
Yes, business owners retire broke for a couple of reasons that we see. One is poor structuring at exit, where 50% goes to the tax man or goes away in fees. The other is they don't replace that income. So they're on a ticking clock. If you have $5 million of net proceed and you spend 500,000 bucks a year, in year 11, there's nothing left. And it's just any number of things that they get wrong once they've exited because the business was their North Star and they just kind of get lost without it.
When people think exit, they're like, oh, well, if I sell my business, it's all just going to be a dream and I'm going to sail off into the sunset. Where is that a lie?
That's a lie in the sense that your business is a huge part of your life and your identity. That's one component of it. The other component is you have a very specific skill set. It's an incredible accomplishment to run a profitable business. Once you get into the millions in earnings, it's truly the dream. It's the American dream, the entrepreneurial spirit. You've done it with all these obstacles stacked against you.
Hmm.
We tip our hats to you. But it's not the same skill set as understanding technical structuring, knowing the tax code, understanding how to financially plan, knowing which insurance policies to have, how to write a will and trust, how to invest these proceeds, and how to defer capital gains. All these other things is not how you own and operate a business. You shouldn't be so hard on yourself and expect yourself to have all these different skill sets. You should bring some people in who can help you and make sure that it can become happily ever after. But on your own, it's a challenge.
What very often happens on the tax side if there isn't adequate planning?
On the tax side, if you don't plan, you might as well just your magic number. Let's say you want to sell for 10 times earnings. You have 5 million in earnings, so 50 million is your magic number. You might as well just consider it 25. Overestimate. That's not an
Yeah.
overestimation in a place
Yeah.
like California, by the way. Between legal fees and the banking fees and everything that you can expect to have to do, once the sale hits, then the IRS is expecting their check in the mail.
Right. So
So if you
you're
don't do
thinking
anything,
like start the
hmm
line at 50%, and then with your tax planning and strategies, try to work your way back from that.
yes, and try to get as close to zero as you can, which it sounds crazy to most people, but it is possible. But even if you get halfway there and you end up in an effective 20 or 25% rate, if we're still using that 50 million magic number,
Hmm.
then we're talking in the $5 to $10 million or more in savings. So it's consequential, to put it lightly.
Yes, that's very consequential. And I think that's a great number for anyone out there who owns and operates a business to kind of hold on to. What about just good old fashioned lifestyle creep, right? This business very often is the engine by which the business owner is earning everything and they have all the write offs and, perks and all these different things. And then once they sell or exit, however they get out, what should they be doing with their lifestyle and how do they plan for that?
I was just chatting to you before we pressed record here. It's like 2 weeks after you sold, it's Tuesday, it's 2 in the afternoon, the kids are in school, your friends are busy. Like what are you doing?
Right.
So then if the phone rings and it's like a golf trip or this new exciting investment opportunity or your friend just bought a yacht and he has space in the harbor in Newport Beach and you should get a yacht too. Like you don't imagine that you're going to make this mistake, but you haven't been in this spot before. It's all new to you. You're bored. You're thinking, "Hey, I got some money. I got some time." And you start making these decisions that you otherwise wouldn't make. So it's easy. It's easy to be the guy with 5 million in the bank account, but you have a new friend group with guys who have 50 million in the bank account. So you're just kind of you're along for the ride, and next thing you know, there's not as much cash left over. So lifestyle creep is a tough one because it's so foreign to you. When you operate your business, that's what you do. That's where most of your mind share and energy is allocated. Suddenly that's not there anymore. You don't really know if you don't have these new guardrails or you haven't thought about these things. So it's good to chat this through with people who have done it before and make sure you have a plan for when those things start popping up.
If you exit at 40 versus exiting at 75, how should you really start thinking about your income and should you invest in another business or like what are your recommendations broadly speaking here for that?
Broadly speaking, the difference there, you have much different personal circumstances. And I'm glad you brought this up because if you're 40 and you have three kids, for example, then you probably, you might have the kids in private school, which is a business expense. But the amount you'll need in savings and how you reinvest might be a little bit more aggressive
Hmm.
because you have to have money set aside for private school and then university for the kids, and you have a lot of life ahead of you. You might start another business or you might reinvest in aggressive stock portfolio or in some venture deals or in some private equity versus late 60s or early 70s. There's not as much large expense coming up, so
Hmm.
you can think about things a little bit differently. You might start having more of a tilt toward legacy or charitable activity or things you can do to make a positive impact, or um, some tax related strategies with estate planning. So you might just have a kind of a different set of priorities and different future expenses that you're planning for or not needing to plan for. So
Right.
that's a very important thing with age or just where you're at in life. You have
Mhm.
to customize accordingly.
What would you caution, someone who actually made it out, and they got the check? What would you caution them for? And let's say they're, 50s, in that ballpark, they still have enough gas in the tank to keep things going.
The caution for this business owner would have to be take your net proceeds and make sure those net proceeds are as close to your gross proceeds as possible through effective structuring and tax planning and strategy. And then without knowing a number, I'm just, this hypothetical, but let's say like 80 or 90% of those net proceeds go toward your financial plan that you can basically run on autopilot that will allow you to live happily ever after, secure generational wealth for your kids and your grandchildren and they're your grandchildren's grandchildren.
Right.
And then if there's 10 or 20% left over, that can be, yeah, I don't know if this is a technical term, but your funny money, where like
Yeah, yeah,
you
sure,
want to
sure.
bet on some cryptocurrency or you want to start up a new venture, or like my wife, for example, wants to run a coffee shop is
Yep.
her dream. And
Sign me up.
I I love my wife. She's not the most business savvy. I'm gonna guess she's gonna operate at a loss. So we're not gonna be banking on that as like an income vehicle. She
Yeah.
might lose us a couple $1,000 a month or more. But if you want to do that, you just be honest about it and make sure that elsewhere in your portfolio and in your financial plan, you're going to insulate yourself from if you have a what would be a devastating loss if you go all in
Right.
on a new venture that falls apart. So just maybe a magic number like 80 or 90% of your net proceeds, make sure those are allocated to keeping you afloat this generation and beyond. And then with the rest, sure, have some fun, do something a little
Yeah.
exotic or whatever it is, and just, if there are losses there, make sure it doesn't sink your ship, so to
Right.
speak.
Well, and that's really kind of, I guess, what everybody wants to know, which is I get this, large inbound infusion of cash, and it's not just for business owners, right? Because this is personal financial planning. It gets a little broader. Where do you see like a allocation goes in these situations? Where some of the first things that places people start looking?
The good news here is if you have a large amount of principal here, your net proceeds are large enough, you don't have to speculate or you don't have to take as much risk.
Hmm.
I think part of you, like if you're a competitor, most business owners are fairly competitive. They're not as averse to risk as the average person.
Hmm.
So they'll look at the S&P 500 and think, I got to be doing better than that.
Right.
Or they get very aggressive, which I respect it, but is it necessary? That's maybe the more salient question. Like if you have $50 million to work with, if you can even just get a 1% return, which you definitely can. I mean, you can get 3 or 4 or 5% in fixed income right now.
Right.
That's $500,000 is 1% of 50 million. Chances are that can fund most of your
Okay.
lifestyle
Well,
expenses.
let's hover on that for a second.
Hmm.
So, because I don't want to breeze over that point, and that really is a critical point for anyone listening to really understand this. So let's run that math again, and let's just consider a scenario with an average CEO who lived modestly. They bought a house and had some basic expenses. Again, let's put them in that 50-ish bracket. Run the math again.
So we're talking about 50 million is your principal amount. Let's say we'll use some numbers here. We'll keep 10 million for fun, for adventure, for travel, for new venture opportunities, for cryptocurrency, for whatever it is, to buy the yacht, the golf trips. So let's keep 40 million to fund our lifestyle and make sure our family can live happily ever after. We're getting 3.5% in the money market right now, which is the risk-free rate of return. So 3.5% on 40 million is going to get you above $1 million, which is going to allow you to spend about 80 or 90,000 bucks a month, still keep that $40 million of principal without ever drawing that down. You have to ask yourself at that point, do I need to take any risk in single stocks or in the S&P 500 or in the NASDAQ, which maybe gets my 40 million to 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 or 100, which would be wonderful. But let's say there's a devastating recession and that 40, it gets hit by 50% and now you're down to 20. And then, next thing you know, a few expenses start adding up. Is it worth the risk? Do you need to do that? And if not, then there's no reason not to just take your risk-free rate of return and live happily ever after.
Right. So you're saying
It's
like
just
on 3.5%, on those numbers that you ran, let's say the business owner is living on $80,000 to $100,000 a month, somewhere in that ballpark. How do they not go broke?
it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it. Like there's still some financial planning, some insurance, some estate planning, like some technical details that you'd want to dig into. But the basic premise that you could put 40 million in the treasury market and just let it roll over, as long as your cash flow, your income is larger than your expenses, then you're going to be okay.
Right.
And I thought like I'm doing two things, right? I don't want to oversimplify it, but it is simple.
Yeah.
Have more income than expense, and you'll be perfectly okay.
When big pots of cash come in, a lot of people want some of that cash, and that is a diversion as well. All of a sudden you have nephews and cousins and stepbrothers and people that you never knew about, and all of a sudden everyone's coming to you for a handout.
With humility, I don't want to just automatically say to talk to people like us, but if you're going through that for the first time, you might not know how you're going to react to that as the business owner. Whereas we've been doing this for years, we've seen these scenarios come up almost every time there's an exit. There's something beyond the numbers and beyond the actual transactional process. There's like an emotional component or some dysfunctional component or an ex-spouse or the problem child. There's always something that we're not therapists, but we've seen these things so much that it's good to have someone in your corner who you can bounce ideas back and forth and talk to them about it. Just that you're not alone when you're going through that process. And that's something that we call it the whole person advisory, what we do, because we're doing the banking and the tax work and the investment and everything else. But we're trying to be emotionally intelligent and understand like the components of behavioral finance as well.
Right.
So we've seen it before. We don't have all the answers, but we're helpful people to talk to, and we'll be there for you if those things do come up.
Okay. Well, that's great, and I think that's a perfect way to round this out. When you think about the business owners that are very sophisticated and the ones that or you have a really good hunch that they're going to make it. They're going to make it through this whole, exit and not retire broke. What are 2 or 3 things that they're doing now? Or like, what are the pillars of what they're doing now to ensure that they don't exit broke?
Okay, the business owners who are gonna exit with a great valuation and they're gonna grow that money over time and they're gonna be living happily ever after, they aren't avoiding exit planning. Or maybe I should say, they understand that exit planning doesn't mean that they're gonna go to market and sell in the next 2 or 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
They just think about exit planning as being aware, understanding their financials and how to grow their earnings and how to defend a 6 or 8 times earnings multiple, they're just broadly aware of what their business is worth and how to drive that valuation higher. They're thinking about some structuring decisions, like if it makes sense to restructure from an S corp to a C corp to try and get some qualified small business stock, or if they want to flip it into a trust so that the proceeds aren't taxed at the time of sale.
Hmm.
They're doing these things. They're not necessarily going to sell tomorrow. They may never sell, but they're willing to do the exit planning. I think that's an important one. And then the second piece, and don't hate me for this. This, like, business owners hate me when I say this. Um, it's possible that you don't have to sell for 10 times earnings or 5 times earnings or whatever it is. It's possible that that's your ego telling you that this is what my business is worth. Over my dead body, would I sell for
Right.
a
Yeah.
penny less than whatever
And
magic number?
flexibility.
So what I always say is, well, okay, how much money do you spend every year? And then they tell me a number. And I say, well, if you sold for 1/4 of that number you just told me, and we got a modest 5% rate of return, that's
Hmm.
more than enough money for you to live on. So how important is it really to sell for 50 when if we sold for 20, you're still doing everything that you wanted to do with your life?
Great point.
Um, and they're like, well, yeah, logically, I understand that, but I'm still not going to sell for a penny less than 45. And it's like,
Hmm.
maybe we meet somewhere in the middle. But I think, I'm a little biased here, but I work with the banking team.
Hmm.
They're going to help you drive that valuation to the number that you want. But I'm thinking in the background, even if we don't get there, I'm going to help you. We can't
Right.
use the G word, guarantee, but
Yeah.
we're going to make sure that you're fine, even if you sell for half of whatever that magic number is.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So it's reasonable expectations, aligning those expectations with your team. It's kind of getting your ego in check. It's having a good sense of reality of what you need. Okay, as we close this out, what is your one word of encouragement for anyone who's considering an exit, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years?
Call is my one word.
I love
Just
it.
call us. We have these conversations with business owners all the time. Not quite all day every day, but any given week we're talking to business owners about these same things,
Yeah,
and we're here to help. So don't be shy. Feel free to give us a call and we can give you some advice. If that turns into a deeper relationship, then great. But if not, we're still happy to help.
awesome. Well, we'll put the contact information down below. Always appreciate you coming on and sharing what you know. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.